Urban Meyer, out of the blue, called the Tennessee Vols, I kid you not, a dark horse national title contender. This happened yesterday. It's Urban Meyer, as for all of those of you who know, was at Ohio State for a significant period of time. Ohio State obviously beat Tennessee in the college football playoff last year before Ohio State, where he won a national title, I think his third year on the job. He was with the Florida Gators for 6 years, and he won 2 national titles and went 6-0 against Tennessee. So Urban Meyer believes in Tennessee, but has a history of pretty much owning Tennessee. It was on an episode of the Triple Option podcast with Rob Stone and Mark Ingram. And it was a look ahead to the 2025 season. He was asked about his top dark horse candidates to potentially win the college football playoff national championship. Rather than pick Florida or Ohio State, he went straight to Tennessee. And here's his quote. Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback at Tennessee. I remember when I first started studying him last year, and I called Brady Quinn and Matt Leinart and said, what am I missing here? This guy looks like a bona fide. He looks like Aaron Rodgers. The ball comes out of his hands like a tennis ball. Yes, he compared Nico Iamaleava to Aaron Rodgers. And then he said later, he got really inconsistent, and that team around him got a little inconsistent, and they still had a heck of a year. If that kid grows as a quarterback, I asked the question after watching, and I know he wasn't playing great teams, but just his physical ability, size, speed, and athleticism, the way the ball comes out, I saw him as a high first-round pick. Now, it remains to be seen, but I'll pick Tennessee when talking about Tennessee as a dark horse national title contender. So here's today's tough question, and I'm going to set it up as the poll question. Why did Urban Meyer call Tennessee a dark horse? No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to phrase it like this. I'm going to phrase it this way. Is Urban Meyer gunning for Josh Heupel's job? Yes, that's the question. And the reason I say that is because I think Urban Meyer is the biggest snake in the business. I think he's the biggest snake in the business. And everything he says is to potentially benefit him long term. I thought he said this last year about Texas, that they should go win the national title. I felt like he was saying that because he was trying to put pressure on Steve Sarkisian, hoping that Texas may possibly get fired and he could take the job. I think he said some things about USC in the same way. He said some things about Ohio State just this past year. Urban Meyer, I think, wants to get back into college football coaching. I think when he props up teams, he puts expectations on them so fan bases, administrators, athletic directors, and whoever he can add fuel to the fire of turning against those coaches if he would like to coach at that job. So today's tough question is, did Urban Meyer pick Tennessee as a dark horse national title contender because he wants to put pressure on Josh Heupel so he could take Josh Heupel's job eventually? I know that sounds crazy. I know that's insane, but the poll question is up. You guys give me your thoughts. I'm going to tell you, I think that's what he's doing here. He compared Nico Iamaleava to Aaron Rodgers. Now, look, I do superlatives all the time. I said Nico Iamaleava was created in a lab to run Josh Heupel's offense. It didn't look like that last year at times. His in-game performance just didn't look the same as what we saw in practice, what we saw in certain moments. I mean, he's got a beautiful touch on the ball. He's got all the physical tools. He just somehow had issues, it seemed like, putting it together. But Aaron Rodgers, you just throw that comparison around? I mean, that's crazy. Aaron Rodgers was so deadly accurate over the middle. Nico Iamaleava is the best passer over the middle Tennessee's had since Josh Heupel's been there. But I'm not going to say he's Aaron Rodgers over the middle. That's an insane thing to say. So I think, and again, it feels like Urban Meyer is just saying stuff to try to make sure that, to do his best to make sure that there's pressure on Josh Heupel if he wants to gun for the Tennessee job. Because I don't see any way how you could consider. I see how you can consider Tennessee a dark horse national title contender. I do. But I just don't put a lot of faith in Urban Meyer doing anything honest or above board. You guys give me your thoughts. Again, the poll question is Urban Meyer gunning for Josh Heupel's job. We'll give you the results soon. Again, the show brought to you by Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
All right. So speaking still with things Urban Meyer said, he labeled a few other dark horse contenders too. I think he said Texas again. Guys, he said Texas because he also would like the Texas job. That would be the most desirable job for him. Texas is probably the best job in America, and it's a better job now given what happened. But when Urban Meyer picked his 3 national championship favorites, he went with Penn State as 1, Texas 2, and Ohio State as 3. I don't really think he's gunning for the Penn State job. That's not the best job to go for, quite honestly. But if anybody, that's not a bad job. I can see Urban Meyer gunning for it. He's gunning for the Texas job, clearly. So he would love to get the Texas job back. He named Ohio State because it's where he coached before, and it's just obvious, even though he probably can't get that job. I think the Texas job and the Tennessee job, naming those jobs, that was very meticulous by him because he's naming jobs he wants to get. He wants to put pressure on those people. So, sorry, 1 second. I apologize. Oh, I apologize for that, guys. He wants to name jobs where he can put pressure on certain people so he can potentially take those jobs. And that's the way Urban Meyer operates. You should never believe a word he says. He's the biggest liar in the history of head coaches in football. So that's where I land. Now, the poll question disagrees with me. Is Urban Meyer gunning for Josh Heupel's job? Only 27% say yes, 73% say no. Just to go to a couple of comments, Joe Vol 64 says Tennessee would never hire Urban. Well, Joe Vol, I agree with you, but that doesn't mean Urban wouldn't try to gun for this. Dylan said that Tennessee's had enough success recently to get a better coach than Urban after the Jags incident. No, I agree with you on all that, Dylan. I don't think Urban Meyer himself is marketable, but I think Urban Meyer is trying to make himself marketable and is gunning for certain jobs. So Adam says Urban doesn't want to coach at Tennessee. If anything, he's trying to use Tennessee to excite Florida. Well, I think he'd prefer to coach at Florida, but Adam, I can tell you right now, Florida is not calling him back. I think he would settle for Tennessee. That's not the top job he would want, but he would settle for Tennessee because I think he just would love to get back into coaching. Dylan says he'd call a guy like Cliff Kingsbury before Urban Meyer. It's an interesting take. And so I think, yes, Adam is right. If Urban wants to coach at your school, it means you have a great roster. Very true. Adam says he would do better at Auburn. I don't know if Urban Meyer wants to live in Auburn because I don't think anybody wants to live in Auburn. There, you guys can hate me. I said it. Nobody wants to live in Auburn. Portions of the program are brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com, chatmortgage.com. My final take is either be excited about Tennessee or because Urban Meyer knows something that we don't, and maybe Nico really is that great and going to turn into something, or worry about, or don't worry, but just keep an eyebrow raised that Urban Meyer might be gunning for that job. I don't think Tennessee would ever hire him. That doesn't mean that Urban Meyer wouldn't gun for it. This dude is one of the biggest snakes and one of the biggest liars, and I try to tell you guys that in all of professional or college sports, okay? He is, I mean, look, it's funny that he dismissed Cam Newton from the team because Cam Newton also recently, from things he's been saying about the Panthers, is a liar too and a bit of a snake. So it's funny that they were on a team together, 2 peas in a pod. Urban Meyer hid behind Tim Tebow for 4 years to throw morality in your face while he was covering up for murders and stalking and every other horrific crime in the book you could think of with players on his team, and just rubbing everybody's nose in it that he was winning. So, I mean, again, never believe a word this dude says. Never believe anything he says is honest. Everything he says is calculating and meticulous. But maybe you could get excited about it. Maybe there's some merit to Urban Meyer saying that Tennessee is a national title contender. Maybe there's some merit to this guy who just, again, suspended a player for a half after he tried to blind somebody, covered up for a domestic abuser on his staff. Yeah, Urban Meyer's just really faked a heart attack, faked a health condition because he wanted an excuse and pretext to retire because he was running from Florida because he knew that Nick Saban had built a program that was going to end his dynasty. Okay, I'm just saying, this guy is calculating on everything he does. He's one of the biggest frauds. So when he says Tennessee's his dark horse national title contender, I raise an eyebrow and say, well, maybe he is just saying this because he wants the Tennessee job. But maybe I'm overreacting. So, you guys can tell me. It's possible that I'm being a little unfair to him here, but I know his history, so I just refuse to actually believe a word that comes out of Urban Meyer's mouth.